The character that you're currently looking at is an Earthshatter Berserker that is undergeared, underleveled, and quite frankly just has the wrong tree. In this guide, though, all that's been corrected, and I think it'll prove to be an actual very, very good league starter, as this was just a test character that I did a couple leagues ago to see how it would perform as a league starter, and now that it's been refined and such quite a bit, I think it's actually a pretty good contender for being a solid league starter. If you're into the slam playstyle, and especially melee, as this is done on, again, on a Berserker. If you're looking for something else, though, like spell-based, or you already have something else in mind, feel free to skip over this if you want, but I'm just throwing this in the pool as I actually think it has a pretty good sense of progression as a build, as you can go from actually pretty solid, strong leveling, which is kind of rare, I feel like, on a Marauder, and transition that into some solid mapping, and then eventually, of course, some bossing. So I'm going to get right into the POB. Before getting into the POB, I just wanted to preface that there will be 2 videos down in the description, one of which will be a link to that full map, so if you want to watch through the entire thing, you can kind of benchmark what that character was versus your own character and such if you choose to play this build. Additionally, as well, though, that POB is wrong, so it's great for comparing things like damage or survivability, but again, don't actually copy that. That's going to be in the main POB, which will be in this video. There'll also be another video, which is going to be a Syrian Exarch kill, which was done in SSF. That was back in Kalandra League, so quite a bit of time ago, but the gear is very, very weak. Tree, again, same thing, don't copy it or anything, but it just kind of gives you an idea of like what damage looks like, because then you can start to use like multiples of that. Let's say if you get like 5x that damage, 6x that damage, then you can kind of get a good idea of like what your setup's going to look like for bosses, etc. So just wanted to talk about that. So this build is actually pretty easy to scale in terms of how its damage works and such, because it's really, really straightforward. Basically what you're looking for is a ton of increased damage nodes on the tree. This is going to be for axes, physical damage reduction, and then of course your Ascendancy as well, which is just giving you a ton of more damage, rage, rage, etc., while scaling more and more damage, and the gear as well is going to help kind of enforce that and such. The way Earthshatter works is that you have an initial impact, which is this right here. This is your main damage, your slam that comes down, and then you're going to have spikes that come out from it, and these are going to come out from fissures, basically, that it creates. Almost like an earthquake kind of thing, but not like the actual earthquake gem. That's more on aftershocks. And so basically, once these spires or spikes come up, they can then be detonated by this attack again. So if you slam like on top of a spike, then it will detonate. Or if you Warcry, that'll also proc the detonation as well. It's got a pretty big radius, like it's pretty lenient for sure. But the big thing here is that spikes can shotgun. So if you have like a boss against a wall and you create some fissures and such, and they spawn some spikes, and you detonate those, that means that those explosions can overlap on the boss, in addition to your initial impact, which is really, really nice. So starting off with the leveling here, the leveling is very, very easy and straightforward. You're basically just choosing everything that says damage, as Marauders need a lot of damage early in order to level efficiently, so you're basically just running through here, grabbing melee damage, maximum life, etc., coming around here and up the top. It's just all two-handed weapon damage. You're looking for things like axes. However, if you can get something like a maul or two-handed sword, that's totally fine, because we don't actually pick up axes or nodes until a little bit later in the early game, so it's okay to kind of use whatever weapons you can find on the ground, but two-handers are generally best for this. Basically, you're pathing all the way through here, grabbing the life, and up to Resolute Technique. You want to get perfect accuracy as soon as possible, because that means you don't have to worry about accuracy on your gear, getting it from auras, etc. At that point, you have kind of a choice. You can choose to go for axe stuff, amplifying your damage by quite a bit, and this mastery is really strong for rage on hit. I would probably go up top side first over bottom side, but both are really, really solid. It's kind of if you want the attack speed or the attack damage. Actually, attack speed might feel a little bit better. I would come down the bottom here first, then go to the top. The other option here is grabbing some life. I mean, you're going to grab both of these, but it's just kind of what order, or you can split the points between the two, although it's a little bit weird to do that because, again, you'd be trying to go for the mastery. Basically down here, you're going to be getting some life, some strength, which is fantastic, and eventually some elemental resistances. This is going to help with carrying you through the campaign, because the gear you're going to find is not that great, and this is going to stay for a while, basically until roughly maps or so, until your gear starts getting better. You can eventually unspec this. Something also to note as well is I do have gear sets and such for different points of your progression of what you could be looking for along with your skills. It does say Earthshatter in here, and this is you're going to get this level 12. Early game though, just use Sunder. Sunder's fantastic, and you're going to get that really early, basically as you get into town, so you can just use Sunder, just start slamming things right off the bat. It's going to be super cool, super simple. I put these kind of from top to bottom, like in importance and such, of things you can look for, because these are going to unlock as you're going through basically like Act 1, Act 2, etc. But I just wanted to kind of let you know about that. As you get down here, though, you'll see things like Determination, Pride, These are things that don't unlock until Act 3, but the idea behind this is the early gems is going around basically to first lab. That's where you get most of your main stuff, and then it kind of starts to, I guess, like become a lot less important of what you're putting in, just because like there's not many more gems that are coming after this. When you reach your first lab, the first thing you're going to want to do is definitely grab Warbringers. That's going to be fantastic. Basically, what this is going to do is just give you more attack damage, which is going to multiply off your previous damage if you were sacrificing Rage recently, and also give you an absurd amount of Rage regeneration, because at this point in the campaign, you will have access to your Intimidating Cry, which is your main source of damage. This is going to be huge because it's just giving you double damage each time you use it on the melee attacks that are exerted, so definitely would recommend getting this. Priority. Enduring is fantastic as well for regeneration and endurance charge generation. Seismic, I would say, comes third and such because it's really, really great for maps and clear. The problem is with it is that you generally don't need that much clear because the mobs aren't as dense and such as they are in maps, so just something to keep in mind. Additionally, as well, at this point, you're probably only going to have your War Banner, maybe Blood and Sand, like together, and something you can add as well as a Herald of Purity, if you want, or a Herald of Ash. Most likely an Ash just for the clear. That's going to be in Act 2, but I didn't put it in here just because of the fact that once you start getting these bigger auras, you're probably going to want to replace that out, as the clear should be still pretty decent going through the campaign, but just something I wanted to talk about. Moving into the second lab pathing, we're beginning to expand our tree a lot more, and as you can see, we're basically just taking more damage from Aspect of Carnage. Although we are taking 10% increased damage taken, this is going to be offset by Fortify here, as we're going to be unlocking this. And that's going to really help give us damage reduction against those hits, as dots are generally not too bad during the campaign, which is going to be amplified by this. However, the hits, though, are going to be really big, things like bosses, etc. And that's why this is going to really help out a lot, because you're just going to get permanent Fortify, essentially, without burning a support gem, which is fantastic. In terms of the actual progression, though, that you're going to be looking for, at this point, I would look to probably go in here for War Cries Cannot Exert Travel Skills. You're going to probably want some CDR at this point for your War Cries, as the War Cries do have a pretty long cooldown without any cooldown recovery rate, and that's just going to make it feel a lot smoother. You can proc your spikes more often, etc. You want to fill out things like this over here, trying to get some axe damage. Impale is pretty decent as well, trying to get that going as well. I think I would leave that, though, probably for the end, as I would try to get things like armor, HP, fill out this area first, etc. So basically, you're saving this for last, if you will. Because the thing is with Impale, is that it works really, really well with Impale Chance, but earlier on, you're not going to have necessarily a ton of Impale off the bat, so this isn't going to be necessarily the greatest of nodes to spec into. Coming into the third lab and end of the campaign, we're basically going to start pathing down here. We're going to go and get some aura reservation nodes and such, as we want to be able to run more auras. The ones I chose are Determination and Pride, as throughout the leveling experience you might be doing like War Banner Determination, right? Like War Banner Blood and Sand. However, I would recommend Determination, at least for leveling, which I have up here. I'd use like Determination, War Banner. That's probably fine, because that way you can put down the banner and gain Adrenaline when you put it down, which is really, really nice for a temporary boost for killing stuff, mainly bosses. But running these two is fantastic. In order to solve mana, because the mana is overall pretty low, but should be enough to cast everything, is basically when we path over here, we get this Jewel Socket. One of these Mana Leech Jewels is extremely cheap on League Start. There's going to be a bajillion of them on the trade site. The max life is just nice to have, but if you can just get literally anything with physical attack damage leached as mana, that will cover it. It should be like an Alteration or like an Alchemy Orb maximum. It should really, really be cheap, because again, there's just going to be a bajillion of them. Basically, that's going to allow you to solve your mana. In addition, we're getting more and more damage here. You can kind of see a bit of a trend here, trying to keep our damage up as we go along because our damage is so reliant on our weapon. These are just some general items and such as you're leveling. The idea is this is just campaign gear and such, right? You'll probably have a better axe coming into the mapping stage of the game, which I will have like a little axe recipe thing that you can do, but it's basically pretty common. You take a rustic sash, that is magic or rare, your weapon of choice, and you sell that to a vendor with a black stone or a blacksmith's whetstone, and that's going to give you a guaranteed physical damage roll on your weapon, and basically you just keep replacing that until you get to maps. I'll have it in the notes here though, so don't worry about it. What's important here is that we're continuing to spec our damage and such, and then that way when we're ready for maps, we're going to be having, you know, a really, really explosive early start, which is really, really nice. And that's because of Rage, getting this in our final lap here. So we're going to have Rage here, and Rage here. This is going to give us a lot of movement speed, attack speed, damage. and our life will overall be pretty solid just because if we're res capped, we're going to have determination on, which in this case is level 1, so the armor looks really low, but this will probably be leveled up a decent amount coming into maps. So you're going to have some kind of armor, especially if you have like a granite flask or something. You'll be absolutely fine for early mapping. Don't worry about it too much. Because again, your single target and clear should be overall pretty solid. So taking a look at the endgame tree here, you're going to notice that a lot of things have changed. Our damage has went through the roof, the tree's more expanded, defense is looking a lot better. So what happened here? Because this is a really big jump. I'm going from like level 70 or so to 93, right? Basically the idea is showing you what you're looking for, especially with the gear and such. Not a matter of like, hey, you need to get this immediately off the bat. So that's really, really important because you're going to see like a Watcher's Eye, but like this is not needed, right? This is just something that you are looking for. This can be replaced with just a rare jewel. That's totally fine. So going into the first of the tree. So basically we're continuing to expand here, get some life finally, which is great. Getting some totem stuff as this is a slammer melee build. We're going to be relying on totems. This is damage without using it. In this case, a Vol Ancestral War Chief, which is fantastic for bossing. As you can see, it cranks the damage of the build by a ton. You just put it down, kill the boss. You generally shouldn't need this when mapping. Berserker on left click, as you're going to be generating so much rage and you just want constant uptime. You can put it manually, but like that's just generally what I prefer. Have all your war cries online and such. Gems are much more leveled up, etc. Trying to look for additional links. This is on a 5-link damage. If you want to go for 6-link, right, then obviously you could check these on. Go for your brutality. You'll have even more. Stick on your Fall Ancestor War Chief, and you're up to like 4.6 mil. The damage is a little bit weird though on this because it's like trying to average out your war cries, etc. But just know that like it's overall enough. So unchecking these real quick here, go back to the tree. We're going to try to get some totem stuff here. We also want to get this reservation. The big thing why our damage jump as well is this allows us to run all of these auras, which is extremely powerful. The fact that we get this mana mastery here, which is absolutely great. Additionally as well, we're getting this additional Warcry mastery here, which is fantastic. As here it has the Warcries cannot exert travel skills. This would be up here. And basically this one would be the minimum power. So basically they're just swapped, but overall it's the same thing. Otherwise, besides that, in our Uber Lab, we're getting Rite of Ruin. This is going to allow us to move faster, attack faster, deal more damage. It's just a buff onto our Rage. You'll notice we're degenning a little bit. This is mainly due to Blood Rage. However, what this doesn't take into account is endurance charges that you're probably going to have quite often from Enduring Cry giving you those. So I really wouldn't worry about the degen. It's basically unnoticeable when mapping, and you're going to have a lot of Leech, and you're going to have Enduring Cry healing you up, so it's really a whatever thing. But just wanted to point that out. Additionally, this config is generally like for Guardian, Pinnacle bossing, like things like that. So if you're looking for like a mapping config, then you can be like, okay, I have Frenzies because I'm going to have Blood Rage up, killing things. And then also is what I would have killed recently, getting Onslaught. That is from the Hatchet Master here, which is really, really nice. So just some things to think about there. But again, wanted to leave it kind of bare bones for that. We take Brine King here just for stun immunity and getting immunity to freeze, which is really nice. You could stick it on Flask too, but just a general thing. If you get that, then you can Lunaris, but Brine King's overall pretty good. And we take reduced effective shock. If you want to go for Ralakesh, that's fine as well if you don't want to deal with like bleeding. But I think Garukan shock's pretty annoying. It is what it is. Going into the gear and such, you're going to notice a pretty solid axe. The idea here is that these are the most 3 important stats. You're looking for high fizz and attack speed. Something you can do for cheap, or at least cheaper if you're looking for a really big weapon, is 1. Don't use this as your 6-link early on. Okay, you use like a corrupted 6-link body armor or something like that, right? And in order to craft this, you can just get like a fractured, like physical damage roll, being like a percent or flat, etc. Try to spam essences and then craft whatever else is needed. The optimal thing for this would be like fractured attack speed, then craft an essence on it for flat, and then use the bench for the last percentage increase. Just as an example, but however you want to do it's totally fine. Double damage is also great, but whatever needs to be done there. For the rest of this, you're going to notice it's basically, I'm just kind of skimming over it. It is life and res, life chaos res, whatever you can get. Rings, there's some attack speed in there for smoothing things out, and some damage recoup, but again, like flexible, right? Just get whatever you can get in there. With this being like a hunter staging, trying to get percent increased life, which is really, really nice. Again, whatever you can do there. This phasing jewel is really, really nice just because it allows you to ignore unit collision while mapping, which is quite nice. In terms of the implicits, I understand it can be a lot to roll for the implicits, and none of these are mandatory here. These are all just nice things to have. They are not anyway like breaking to the build if you don't have them. So again, if you remove the implicits here, like on these Sierra Next Arcaneater of World Gear, you're fine. Again, you're just looking for these kinds of things, right? Like that's the general idea. And at this point, you're basically good to go. If you've got all this gear set up, you're going to be doing so much more damage. In the showcase, I think this was like a third or something like that of the damage in the showcase. So this is a really nice setup here. Definitely can complete your Void Stones. The only thing to watch out for is on something like Uber Elder, which would be like Shaper Balls, because the fact they have a lot of penetration and we have no suppression whatsoever to try to help mitigate that penetration. We do have a little bit of max res, but again, it's just enough to pen right through it. So just be careful of that. Otherwise, though, like Exarch and Eater, you'll just roll over them, no problem at all. Maven, same thing. You can tank actually a lot more stuff on Maven, which is nice, just because of the fact that like she doesn't have like pen, which is really, really nice. So yeah, that's basically the progression to 4 Void Stones. It's overall not too bad, and craftable gear as well. There's no uniques or anything. You can sub in uniques if you want something like a Death's Rush for a ring, if you want like Adrenaline, things like that. It's pretty flexible, but these are just the ideas of scaling that you're looking for. In terms of going for Uber Endgame, this is really out in the open here. So like I have like a super insane like 1k DPS axe. This helmet here, I don't know how expensive it's going to be. If it is cheap, like within the chaos range, pick it up and use it. Stick your gems in it, and you will notice a really big damage increase. Because basically what happens here is your war cries go in there giving you additional charges, which is nice, so that way they can be recovering as you're using them. And basically it's going to give you % more damage for each thing that is exerted, or each attack that is exerted. And so, yeah, it just gets up giving you a ton of damage. It's really, really nice. You can stick this on the good gear or solid gear setup, but I just left it on Uber Endgame because I don't want people to like rush out and get the helmet for like many divines when there's no need to do that. So in terms of this unique here, Dawn Strider, this just allows you to really just unspec out of this. Not sure if it's worth it, but it does give you a lot of damage just because it increases the buffs of your ancestor totems, which is definitely a big more multiplier. So that's there. Otherwise, the gear is the same from the good. It's just if you want to improve rolls, cool. You can also go for like a 4th Vow Divine Flesh setup for your body armor. That's fine as well, but just leaving it the same. At this point, you're also just getting a lot of like Awakened Gems, trying to get things if you want to get like 2120s, etc., right? Like it's just kind of maxing that stuff out. Nothing really of like super meat here, but just know that it has enough damage to, you know, do a lot of different things. I wouldn't bring it into Uber Bossing necessarily, and I also wouldn't bring it into things like probably like Simulacrum, just because the fact that the things that this build is really good for would be things that are more like, I guess, like concentrated. So things like an Essence. It could even do like a Blight, not necessarily like blighted maps, but like a Blight strategy, like farming out Blight maps. You could also maybe look for an Ultimatum, as that's decently condensed, which is really, really nice. Even Delirium is like okay. I just wouldn't recommend things like Breach and Legion, just because this doesn't have the coverage to be able to really cook in those mechanics. Harvest is excellent for this. This is really, really awesome. Expedition as well. So like Harvest Expedition is probably the top 2 for this. That's what I would choose. And there aren't too many mods as well like that hurt this build from Expedition. There's definitely like immune to Fizz or like avoid damage from hits, etc. But that's a general thing overall, unless you're just playing like a dot build or something like that. So yeah, that is the overall rundown of this. I think it's a really, really strong build and underrated. If you're looking for slams, it's a really great way to experience it, because in addition to what is shown here, we also have quality changes, and this is kind of the last thing, is that Earthshatter is now gaining the helmet enchant, which was shown in that video, by the way, is that it summons an additional fissure coming out of the main additional attack. However, not only is that applied to this gem, they are also doing a quality of life fix, which is huge, which is increasing the maximum spikes from 15 to 18. What would happen, and what happens in that footage, is that you'll create 6 fissures, but you only have 15 spikes. So if you attack 3 times, then you're going to get spikes that get deleted. By them increasing it to 18 spikes, we now have a greater threshold for stacking up more spikes for more damage, which is absolutely fantastic. So lots of quality of life stuff there. Additionally, war cries will be on a lower cooldown because these qualities are improved. They are all cooldown recovery rate, including things like enduring. So that means you can have them up more often, and they're doubled up to 40% instead of 20%, so you can cast them more often. It's just damage buffs across the board, which is really, really nice, and overall quality of life, which is great to see. Again, both videos and such of the showcase will be in the description, so you can kind of make for yourself of the build, etc. But again, at the end of the day, it's pretty flexible. You just throw on more damage, kind of cooking along, it's all good. Defense is fine. Again, do what you can with the rest of the gear and such, but you know, that's about it. Nonetheless, though, again, if you don't want to play this on League Start, no problem. Disclaimer, I will not be playing this on League Start, but it's a great build. Played it twice in the past. on a really, really scuffed setup, and it was fun then, so on a proper setup, it definitely is going to feel a lot better. Anyway, regardless of whether or not you play this, enjoy League Start. It's looking like an awesome one. I'll catch you guys later. Peace.